Have you ever wondered what can happen when someone decides to cross the line of distrust and ends up discovering something that changes everything? This is the story of a powerful man, surrounded by luxury, but a prisoner of his own pride. A man who believed he knew the value of people, until the day he decided to test one of them. The title of this story sums it up. Millionaire secretly follows his maid, and the truth he finds breaks his heart. But what this millionaire found that night, on the cold streets of an American city, goes beyond what any money can buy. Behind a thoughtless attitude lay a heart about to be transformed, and what seemed merely curiosity would become a lesson in humanity, capable of shaking even the most hardened of hearts. Before you begin, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and get ready, because what you're about to hear may make you rethink the true meaning of the word wealth. Ethan Miller was the living portrait of American success. At 42, the owner of a technology company in New York, he had built an empire that many would call a dream. A mansion in the hills, imported cars, dinners with crystal glasses. But behind it all, there was a silence that followed him like a shadow. His laughter was expensive, calculated. His words were measured as if each phrase were part of a contract. He believed that respect could be bought and that loyalty was just another investment. The world applauded him, but no one truly knew him, not even himself. Every morning, Ethan would wake before the sun, look out the panoramic glass window, and see only concrete. A cold, gray landscape that perfectly reflected what he felt inside. It was in this impeccable house that Maria worked, a discreet woman of Latin origin, always with a calm look and an expression that mixed tiredness and serenity. While Ethan lived surrounded by luxury, Maria lived surrounded by faith. And it was precisely this difference that bothered him. He couldn't understand how someone who earned so little could seem so at peace. For him, happiness was a consequence of a bank balance. For her, it was a matter of purpose. Sometimes, as he crossed the hall, he would watch her set the table with almost sacred care. She placed each piece of cutlery in its place as if the gesture mattered. And in a way it did, because everything she did came from the heart. Ethan, however, saw it as submission. He thought she was grateful to have a generous boss, but the truth was different. Maria didn't work just for the money. There was something deeper, a reason Ethan could never have imagined, something that fate was silently about to reveal. As she cleaned the marble floor, he thought, how can anyone be so happy? So little, so simple, so invisible. Little did he know that soon it would be precisely this simplicity that would confront him with his own inner poverty. How many times, like Ethan, do we confuse greatness with power and forget that a person's true worth isn't measured in numbers? That morning, the sound of a cup landing on a saucer echoed through the silent kitchen. An ordinary gesture, but one that would mark the beginning of something extraordinary, because while Ethan was trying to make sense of the world outside of him, a much bigger story was about to begin, right there, inside his own home. And if you've already begun to reflect on what really matters, leave your like now and stay with me, because what comes next will challenge everything you believe about appearances and judgments. In the following days, Ethan began to notice details that had previously gone unnoticed. Small things, subtle gestures. Maria always arrived at the same time and left later than agreed. She never complained, never asked for a raise, and always carried a small cloth bag when she left the mansion. At first, he didn't care, but the thought began to linger. The discomfort grew like a thorn in his side. Why would someone stay so long after work? Why would they leave every day with the same bag in their hands, always looking around, as if hiding something? Ethan, accustomed to distrusting everyone, began to see mystery where there might have been only routine. He wondered, could she be taking something from the house? An object, a piece of jewelry, money? Distrust is a virus that spreads quickly, and in hardened hearts, it finds fertile ground. One afternoon, while Maria was cleaning the office, Ethan walked in unexpectedly. She turned startled and smiled with the calm of someone who fears nothing. "Is everything okay, Mr. Miller?" he asked. He replied with a simple yes, but he watched her gaze. There was a serenity there that disarmed and irritated him at the same time. He began to observe more. Security cameras, schedules, small tests. He purposely left notes scattered around just to see if they would disappear. Nothing disappeared. Maria remained the same, silent, dedicated, kind, and that confused him even more. But something intrigued him deeply, always at 7:30 at night. Maria would leave in a hurry, walking through the icy streets. He asked himself, what could be so important to her that she would brave the cold every night? And the more he tried to ignore it, the more that question consumed him. Ethan's arrogance brooked no mystery. He wanted control, explanations, proof. He couldn't imagine that behind that silent routine lay something that would challenge his certainties, sometimes the rich fear what they don't understand. And the fear of discovering the truth can be stronger than the truth itself. One winter night, as he watched Maria's car drive away from the window, Ethan felt a strange pang in his chest. It wasn't anger nor curiosity. It was something new, almost uncomfortable. Doubt about himself, about what he was doing, and about what he really knew about people. He placed his wine glass on the table and murmured, "Tomorrow, I'll find out what this woman is hiding." Little did he know that this decision would be the turning point in his life. Because sometimes, when we follow someone driven by distrust, what we find is not the other person's mistake, but the mirror of our own emptiness. And if you've also judged someone before knowing their story, leave your like now and write in the comments. How many times have appearance deceived you? Because what Ethan discovers next will make you rethink everything you understand about wealth, loyalty, and love. That night, Ethan barely slept. The clock ticked slowly, as if time were mocking his anxiety. He tossed and turned in bed, surrounded by expensive sheets and bitter thoughts. Doubt was now an obsession. He needed to know. At dawn, the New York sky was covered in a thick gray, and a light drizzle seemed to announce that something important was about to happen. Ethan put on a dark coat and a cap and left earlier than usual. He didn't want anyone to suspect. He spent the day distracted, looking at the clock, waiting for the moment when Maria would leave the house. When the clock struck 7:30, there she was. Same simple clothes, same bag in her hands, same hurried gait. Ethan waited a few minutes, then got in the car. He started the engine silently and began following her through the streets lit by solitary streetlights. The city looked like a different view from his luxury car. Far from the skyscrapers and clean avenues, there were alleys, graffiti-covered walls, and people rushing to escape the cold. It was a world he rarely saw, and which, until then, he thought didn't exist. Maria walked steadily, crossing narrow streets, passing old buildings and broken storefronts. Ethan kept his distance, watching. His heart was pounding, torn between fear and curiosity. What could a woman like her hide here, he thought. But there was something else in her gaze, a restlessness he couldn't explain. When curiosity is born of pride, fate often responds with lessons that hurt. Ethan drove for several minutes until Maria turned onto a nearly unlit street. He parked the car a few feet away and kept walking. The sound of his footsteps echoed on the wet asphalt, and the cold wind bit his face. His heart raced when he saw Maria stop in front of a small wooden house, with windows covered with old cloths and a faint light escaping through the cracks. She looked around, opened the door, and entered. Ethan approached slowly, hiding behind a tree. Inside, children's voices echoed, giggling softly. "What is this?" he whispered to himself. The curiosity was now almost unbearable. He took another step, peered out the window, and saw something that made him freeze. It wasn't what he imagined. There was no luxury, no crime, no dark secret. What he saw was simple, and at the same time devastating. But what exactly did Ethan witness in that house? What did Maria do every night, far from the mansion, hidden under the cold and silence? Before you find out, if this story has already caught your attention so far, leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next is the point that changes everything. Through the small, fogged-up window, Ethan watched with his heart racing. The night chill no longer came just from the wind, but from within him. What he saw left him speechless. Inside the house, Maria was surrounded by children, 6, maybe 7, all of varying ages, some in torn clothes, others wrapped in thin blankets. The small space smelled of warm soup and hope. Maria smiled, kneeling before them, serving each dish with care. The bag she carried every day didn't hide anything illegal, as he'd imagined. It was filled with food, clothes, and small used toys. Ethan leaned against the wooden wall and closed his eyes. Shame washed over him like a silent wave. How many days had he distrusted her? How many times had he looked at Maria as if she were a lesser piece in a game he believed he controlled? Now he saw there a woman who did what he, with all the wealth he had never had the courage to do, care without expecting anything in return. While he counted figures, she counted smiles. Inside the house, Maria sat down next to a coughing girl. She took a cloth, wet it with warm water, and gently wiped her face. Ethan felt a knot in his throat. That woman, who spent her days cleaning the floor he walked on, spent her nights cleaning the wounds of those the world ignored. The most powerful man on the block, the symbol of success and prestige, now discovered the real meaning of the word greatness, and yet the shock didn't stop there. On one of the walls were old photos, newspaper clippings, and notes with simple messages. One of them, handwritten, read, "Thank you, Mrs. Maria, for giving me another chance." Ethan couldn't take it anymore. The tears came without permission, hot and heavy. He turned away from the window, walked a few steps, and leaned against the car, trying to breathe. In that moment, he realized that the poverty wasn't hers, it was his. A poverty of soul, disguised by numbers and applause. For a few minutes, Ethan stood motionless, staring into space. The sounds of the distant city mingled with the laughter coming from the house. It was as if the whole world stopped to remind him of something he had long forgotten: the power of empathy. As he watched, Mary left the house and looked up at the sky. "I didn't know I was being followed." He closed his eyes and gave silent thanks, perhaps for another day of life, perhaps for having been able to feed those children. Ethan saw her smile, a simple, unpretentious smile, and it was there that the ground seemed to disappear beneath his feet. The woman he had thought was weak carried within her a strength he had never understood. It's ironic. The richest man in town discovered that the most valuable treasure was hidden under his maid's apron. With his face wet, Ethan got into the car and sat in silence for a few minutes. He didn't know whether to go home or knock on the door. Deep down, something told him that this night wasn't just a discovery, it was a calling. As the car engine started, he looked in the rearview mirror and muttered under his breath, "What does it mean to be rich after all?" And if you've ever asked yourself this question, leave your like now and share this story with someone who needs to remember what really matters, because what Ethan does after that night will show that even the coldest hearts can learn to love again. The next morning, Ethan woke up feeling different. The sun filtered through the curtains of his mansion and illuminated the immaculate hallways, but he barely noticed the luxury around him. The previous night's discovery echoed in his mind like a bell that never stopped ringing. He watched Maria tidying the kitchen, now with a different perspective. There was no guilt in her gesture, only silent dedication. Every detail, every movement, carried a message he finally understood. True greatness is measured not in numbers, but in acts of love. Ethan decided to act, without telling anyone. He got in his car and bought groceries, clothes, toys, and supplies for the small shelter Maria ran. Each bag filled with the necessities was like a silent apology, an acknowledgement of his own blindness to what truly mattered. When he arrived at the simple house, Maria greeted him with surprise and hesitation. Her eyes widened, fearing reprimand, fearing losing her job or facing disapproval. But Ethan just smiled, a genuine smile this time, without pride or arrogance. "I wanted to help you," he said calmly. "No need." "Mr. Miller," she replied, confused. "Yes, you do. Because you taught me something I never imagined I would learn. You taught me what it means to be truly rich. The children watched curiously, some smiling shyly, others huddled in worn blankets. Ethan knelt down, handed over the packages, and felt a surge of emotion he'd never felt before. The weight of money, which had once defined his worth, now seemed worthless. Every smile he saw was worth infinitely more than any figure or investment he had ever made. Sometimes we take the wrong path to find what truly matters. Ethan followed Maria out of distrust, but ended up following the right path, the path of the heart. Ethan stood there for a while, watching the woman he had once judged, the woman who had now become the silent teacher of his most important lesson. As the children laughed, played and ate, he realized that the world could be much bigger than his mansion, much richer than his coffers. When he returned to the mansion, nothing was the same. Every object, every wall reflected something that hadn't existed before. Humility, gratitude, understanding. The man who had once measured the world by numbers now saw life in acts of kindness. Ethan understood that true power lies not in domination, but in service. That true wealth is not hoarded but shared, and that the heart can learn to see where the mind fails. If you judge someone by what they see, you might be looking at the wrong side of life. Sometimes the greatest treasure is where we least expect it. And if you also feel like you need to learn to value small actions and big hearts, leave your like now, subscribe to the channel, and share this story. And tell me in the comments, if you were in Ethan's shoes, would you have the courage to follow the same path? Time passed, but that night and that discovery never left Ethan Miller's mind. Every time he looked at his mansion, his cars, and everything he had achieved, he was reminded of what truly mattered, the human heart and the gestures that transform lives. His experience with Maria changed his perspective on wealth, power, and happiness. He realized that being rich isn't just about having money, but about knowing how to use what you have to do good, to touch lives, and to inspire hope. While Maria continued her quiet work, caring for the children, Ethan decided to help her steadily but quietly. He didn't want recognition. He just wanted to be part of something bigger than himself. In the land of opportunity, the millionaire discovered that the greatest investment isn't in stocks, real estate, or expensive cars. The greatest investment is love, compassion, and quiet generosity. Ethan learned a lesson many never learn. Judging is easy, understanding takes courage, and helping transforms both the receiver and the giver. Life, he realized, is too short to be measured by numbers alone. True value lies in what can't be bought, in the smiles you spark, the hands you hold, the lives you touch. Today, Ethan and Maria's story is more than a personal memory. It's a reminder to all of us that true wealth lies in acts of kindness we perform without expecting anything in return. And even if you've never met a Maria or been an Ethan, you can start making a difference wherever you are now. Every gesture counts, every action makes a difference. So, if this story touched your heart, if it made you reflect on what really matters, leave your like now. Subscribe to the channel for more moving stories like this. And share this video with someone who needs to hear this lesson today. And don't forget, in the comments, tell us what being truly rich means to you, because in the end, what Ethan learned is what we can all learn, that the greatest treasure in life is not measured in gold, but in love, empathy, and the courage to see beyond appearances.